The ceasefire in Iran, in the Iran war, prompting so many questions of whether the U.S., Iran, and Israel can reach a peace deal in the next 2 weeks. Joining us right now on the latest developments, retired Vice Admiral Kevin Donegan. He served as commander of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet and is now a distinguished military fellow at the Middle East Institute. Good morning to you. We're all trying to understand where this all goes. Obviously, I think the word of the morning right now is at least relief. So that's on the good side. The question is, what are the permutations of the next 2 weeks take?
Hey, well, thanks, Andrew. I think the key thing that we all need to do right now is watch what happens in terms of what do the militaries do? Is this ceasefire actually taking hold? And it appears that it is. Right now, it appears that the major attacks have stopped from the United States, and it appears the same thing from Iran, although there's some fighting in Lebanon. So that's one. I think the other key thing for us to understand is what happens in the Straits of Hormuz. As you know, that was the ultimatum. It was related to the Straits of Hormuz. Is Iran going to let traffic flow there, energy traffic flow in and out? And more importantly, are they going to charge a toll for that? Because that is obviously one of the things that this administration doesn't want is Iran to have control of the Straits, meaning charge tolls as ships pass.
Well, I think the bigger question is ultimately who controls the strait at all, meaning even if they're not charging for it right this minute, they could charge for it in a couple of weeks, depending on what kind of deal is ultimately struck or not. And the other piece of this is, do you believe that Iran's going to be restocking missiles and other things over the next 2 weeks? I assume both sides are going to be doing that. And so how do you think, we're talking about this Venn diagram, given the asks on both sides, how do you think you get to a lasting peace?
Yeah, Andrew, that's really the key point, right? The Iranians have presented this thing called a 10-point plan. And in that are certain things that are, in essence, have been red lines for the United States. So the real key is to see how those get resolved in Pakistan, because that appears to be where the leadership is going to meet to have this discussion. So all eyes are going to be on that, and no one really knows how that's going to pan out. There are ways, though, to script and craft even the 10-point plan to something that the U.S. could agree to. But as it's originally written, as this 10-point is originally written, which says all U.S. military forces leave the region, the Iranians have nuclear enrichment, they can charge $2 million per ship for ships to transit. The idea is to see if those things can be resolved in a way that this administration would accept and that the Iranians are going to accept. And in these 14 days isn't a lot of time to do that, but we'll find out pretty quickly if progress is going to be made as those things get resolved.
Are you of the view, and I mentioned Ray Dalio at the beginning of our program today, he's always...
Why, but...
Well, because he has a
mentioned him a lot, and
he has an interesting take.
When he's right about something, let me know.
He has an interesting take that ultimately whoever controls the strait has won the war.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. I don't know that that's an interesting take. In the end, I think this, what we've seen is Iran has been beaten back, in their power projection capability. That's been clear. The leadership that was there in the beginning isn't the same leadership, but they still are the same regime that controls the government, just different people.
By the way, arguably maybe worse, depending on what you think of them.
That's true. So where we stand right now is again, that's why I said all eyes have to be on the Straits, and in the end, can we codify something that all can live with? And what the Gulf nations don't want, and what the United States don't want, and what no one really wants is a change to what we call rules-based order. That is, commerce flows freely through these international waterways. We don't want to set a precedence here that a nation that's on one side or the other of an international waterway can charge tolls. That would change not just for the Middle East region, but more globally, the way that free flow of commerce and the global supply chain works.
Well, given that what we've done so far in terms of really dictating terms to the Iranians, and the Iranians blinked, yes, sir, why would we allow Iran to be controlling the strait after all of this when we're still ready? I mean, we got so many assets over there right now, and even more, B-52. There's all kinds of things over there right now. Maybe the ring of civilians is is leaving the power plants and the bridges right now. But I just can't see, we're in the driver's seat. Iran is not in the driver's seat, and who's going to control the strait? At least it doesn't have to be that way.
I don't think you're going to see U.S. forces leave the region or the military stand down. I think what you're going to see is the U.S. forces remain there, remain postured, and the idea here is this drives the negotiations in line with something that we want. And I absolutely agree that we don't want an end state where Iran controls the straits, either by saying that they can restrict flow or by charging tolls. That's not the end state that the United States would want out of this, and it's one that we shouldn't accept.
Can you speak to one issue, which is our interests versus, to the degree you think that they're diverged, Israel's interest in terms of regime change, what winning ultimately looks like? And I ask in part because there was a report yesterday that really described in the New York Times directly the debate that was happening even before this war began, as Netanyahu effectively apparently sold the president, despite some protestations by people around him, to do all of this.
Yeah, and I can't say, what happened in that regard, but what we can do is watch what the Israelis do. And it appears the Israelis have stopped also their attacks into Iran. What they haven't done, though, is stopped their operations relative to Hezbollah, which is actually one of the demands in the Iranian 10-point plan. And I don't know that that's going to upset this. I doubt it will. I think that the Israelis will make that something that's non-negotiable for them, but we'll see as this moves on. But I think in the end, in terms of regime change and whether we can unseat those that are in power and the mullahs there in Iran, I don't see that piece is achievable. The Iranian regime is baked into the fabric of the whole society, all the way down to local police stations, but all the way including in construction companies and finance and et cetera. So dismantling the regime would really be dismantling the governing way in Iran. So I don't think that anyone really expects that this conflict would end up in regime change. The great hope is it sets conditions for a future regime change.